What's going on, everyone? Today we're going to do a pretty simple lesson on accessing data inside of JavaScript objects. So a JavaScript object is just something that we can use to hold data, and I'm going to write one out right now. We're going to make this object represent some data about a person, and this person is going to be Tom Hanks. So with some of the facts are going to be skewed on this one, but it'll be kind of fun. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and start out. We're going to do let person object, and just put this in the back of your mind. Not really a big deal, but we could also do var person object, or we could also do const person object, right? For this, doesn't really matter, but for the time being, I'm going to do let. Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and throw brackets around my data. And so here we go. We now have the frame for a JavaScript object to start being built. So what we're going to do is we're going to put some key value pairs in there, which basically just means we're going to write something like this. So first name is going to be equal to a string, which is going to be Tom, right? And that's going to be our first key value pair. So we're literally just going to say we have an object, and inside that object, one of the attributes in there, key value pairs, is first name. So if we want to get Tom's first name, we'll just call for Tom's first name, right? Or we'll call for the person object first name, right? So we're going to give some more stuff in here. Last name equals Hanks, right? And you see that because they're strings, I'm putting them in quotes, right? And we're going to see how it's going to change here in just a second with the data type. I'm going to say, how old is Tom Hanks? 61, right? Maybe. We'll just say that. Probably younger than that, but we'll just assume for this purpose that that is maybe what his age is. So we're going to say 61, right? And because it's a number, no quotes, right? Because that is how we format the data type inside of JavaScript, right? Then moving on to that, we're going to say, is Tom Hanks hungry? Hungry. Is he hungry? Yes. And we put a Boolean in there. So is he hungry? True. Yes, he is. And yeah, I don't know why I did that semicolon. That was just an accident, but it is comma after that. And see, a Boolean value of true or false can be represented just like that. Because it's a Boolean, it's not a string. It's not a number, but it doesn't need quotes, right? Now, if I put quotes around it, then it would make it a string of true. But we want a Boolean for this purpose, so there we go. And Booleans are good for like binary things like, is he hungry or is he not? Either one or the other, right? Kind of something like that. Then what we're going to do is we're actually going to put a separate object within this object, which is kind of crazy. So we're going to set up just the way that we did before, except for this point in time, I know you might be thinking like, hey, why didn't we say let and then the object's name or whatever? Well, we don't have to do that here. We just specified that we are making an object, and it is a key value pair inside of our object. So it's like a sub object, basically, is the sort of concept you want to think around. So for this, we're going to go ahead and we're going to give him 126 Cherry Lane, which is, I have no idea if that's actually a place. And city be New York. And you see I have a syntax error right there because I hit a period and not a comma, so I'm going to throw that in there. And the city will be New York. And then we'll go ahead and do the state, which will also be New York. And see, this is like a data structure, right? So if you're building out a dummy data structure to play with, this is how you do it. Yeah, you would just do this, and then you probably like cut and paste this down, all of this stuff, and then change the items in it for a dummy data structure. But this just represents like data that you would actually have that you could be using in an application right here, because most of the time it's going to come in as this, right? It's going to come in as JavaScript objects. So it's very important to like understand like sort of the format of what you're getting here. So let's do this zip. which is going to be a number that I just made up, right? So that's that, right? But then we're going to have an additional, thing here. We're going to put in an array, and we're going to do that, his hobbies, right? And his hobbies are going to be golf, getting the coronavirus, because apparently Tom Hanks was the coronavirus right now, and acting, right? So since that is the last item in our object, we do not have to worry about putting a comma around it. And now we can start doing some stuff with it. So over here in the console, if I want to pull this up, right? So after changing just a little syntax error that I had, I needed to put equals right before my array, and there we go, we're good to go. Now I can just go ahead and call person object, right? And there it is. And so now we see the full object, and we see the address, age, first name, hobbies, is he hungry, and the last name, right? So anyhow, now that we have all that, we can begin to access just like specific properties of it. So if I wanted to get just a specific property, let's just say I want to get the last name. What I can do is come in here and be like person object dot first name, right? So that got me the first name, and I can do that with any of these. So now I bet you're probably saying like, well, how do I get the object inside of this object's content? So how do I get inside of person object, how do I get the address and city and state? Like, how do I get all those items? So what we would do for that is it's kind of like, it just trails down. It's just sort of with dots, you can just begin to continually reference down. So person object address, right? And then what's the sub item of that? Well, we'll go ahead and we'll get the city. And then we can see we got New York, right? So things just kind of step down like that, right? So we can do this with dot notation, or we can also do what's called bracket notation, which is basically the same. We're doing the same thing. It's just a different format for accessing it, which can kind of help us with when you're writing code. You can find uses for it when you're trying to pass like more like dynamic things in there. So let's see. We do person object address, right? And then we do brackets, single quotes, and then we're going to put in the name of what we're trying to access. And there we go, we got New York too, right? So this is just to show that there's multiple different ways to format it, and those have uses. But moving on forward, if we want to access one of his hobbies, right, we're going to want to go ahead, person object dot hobbies, and you would think that, you know, maybe we might just do something like this, like dot golf or brackets golf, but that's actually not the case. So if we're accessing items inside of an array, inside of an object, we're just accessing items inside of an array, we need to bracket and then reference the index or the numerical order of these. So the index starts at 0. So this would be 0, 1, and 2. So if I want golf, then I would go ahead and do that. And there you go, I get golf. Right? So that's awesome. So let's actually see if we can go ahead and give this object a new key value pair. Like if I wanted to add something additional to this, then let's see what we have to actually write to make that happen. So it's really actually pretty easy. So if you access something that is not there in the object already, like if I had said school, right? Now we see in our object we don't have a school in here, but what it does if we put an equal sign is that it will add it to the object. So what we can do right here is we can say person object dot school equals, and we can just say Harvard. I don't really know if he went there, but we'll say he did, right? Cool. So if I do, now if I just call the whole object, we can see that we have actually added a school of Harvard to this object. So that's pretty cool, right? So this allows us to kind of see like how you can add things to objects, like new attributes as they come up, and then also access any attributes inside of an object and whatever the data is, right? So pretty solid. So let's go ahead and let's take it further. So let's actually take the school thing, and maybe we want the school to have more details about when he went. So we're going to say person object, right, dot school, and then we're actually going to say this equals an object, and we're going to go in here and we're going to actually make like the name of the school, right, and then we're going to quotes, add that attribute, and then a colon, right. We're going to say Harvard, right. Then we're going to comma that. We're going to add another attribute in here. So we're going to be like year. What year did he graduate, right? And we'll just say that that is like 1987. I don't know if that's when he got there, but that's it. Actually, 1987. Not a string, so it just goes in there straight, right? So we're going to go ahead, close that off, throw that in. You see it added it to the object. Let's check our person object real quick. And there we go. So now we have a school object that has a name of Harvard and a year of 1987. Pretty cool, right? So let's say that we actually don't need to know his hobbies or if he's hungry anymore. And let's say that those things are not something that we need to worry about anymore. Well, what we can do, we want to delete them. So that's literally what we put. Delete, and then what we want to delete. So person object dot hobbies. And then I'm going to do what's called a ternary operator. And I'm just going to put two and signs or two ampersands, right? And I'm going to add on an additional command that says delete person object dot is hungry, right? So I'm just gonna bang that out. It did it. It's true. That's just what the console's telling us right there. And then I'm gonna pull up this person object, and I'm gonna see if those things are in there, and they're not in there anymore, right? Now they may be in here in this code, but inside the console, this is just the environment where we're changing and modifying what's going on with this. So if I refresh this page, yes, they will still be there because they're hard coded into my code pen right here. Like that are the attributes that come with this object. But with this right here, with the way we've modified it with these commands, now it's modified and it doesn't have those attributes. So that's pretty cool, right? So let's go ahead and actually do something else. So if we want to see the first, or if we want to see a list of the attributes that are available in our object, we can do this. And this is kind of getting into kind of something that is sort of a tangent. This is, but we're going to do get own property names, right? And then we're going to do person object, right? So when we do this, it's going to show us what we have available. So we kind of wanted to know what properties were available and what the names of those properties were inside of that object. We could do that, and we could see a list of what we need to grab, right? Pretty cool, right? So on top of that, that's a lot of stuff to do with JavaScript objects. So definitely a pretty comprehensive thing. I definitely would say go to this code pen, check us out. I'll provide link to that resource so you can go here and just play around with this object and try some of these things and see what happens. So anyhow, thank you for watching and have a good one.